Oui, c'est bon.
Okay. So I will do my talk in English. We have Moe here that doesn't understand French, so everything in English. So hello everyone. I'm Sandra Potin. I just arrived at Lesia. And actually today is only my second day of work in the lab. So I thought that before starting I should take a short moment to present what I've been working on in the past. So I did my PhD in Grenoble at the IPAG. I worked on the development of the shadow goniometer that I will present in a while. I measured bidirectional reflectance spectroscopy in the laboratory on meteorites and then made the link with the observation of asteroids. I worked on the effect of geometry and thermal alteration on the reflectance spectroscopy. Then I went to Canada for a postdoc, where I worked on the development of a Raman spectrometer for the Canadian Space Agency. And then I started here at Lesia to work with Antonella on the MIRS instrument and the observation of the characterization of nearest objects. But today I'm going to present the comparison between laboratory reflectance spectroscopy that we make on the ground with meteorites and observation of asteroids. So first, reflectance spectroscopy is commonly used to retrieve information about any surfaces. We can have information about asteroids, about meteorites in the lab, about anything. It could be the table, the wall, anything. The principle is always the same. We have the light that arrives on the surface. It's reflected, and we catch this reflected light using a spacecraft in space. And then we extract the spectra of it, and we obtain this kind of information here. Reflectance spectroscopy is commonly a tool to separate, to classify the different asteroids. What we call the taxonomy of asteroids is based on the shape of their reflectance spectroscopy. It can be the presence or absence of absorption band. It can be the general slope of the asteroids and also the amount of reflectance. So it's a technique that is commonly used in astronomy these days. In the lab, when we want to analyze asteroids, we can take small pieces of asteroids that fell on Earth quite regularly, and they are meteorites. They are small fragments of asteroids, so their composition is roughly the same of their parent bodies. And if we want to make experiments about asteroids in the lab, we can use the meteorites. You can see here that the reflectance spectra of the meteorite match the one of the parent bodies. Typically, when we have two different reflectance spectra, that means that we have two different surfaces. You can see here on these two spectra, you have one spectra of a meteorite, the overlight, and the carbonaceous chondrite. You see the spectra are drastically different. We have here several absorption band, a slope that is quite strong, a high amount of reflectance. And for this meteorite here, we have a very low amount of reflectance, around 9%. It's rather flat. We have a big absorption band here. We have two different spectra. We have two different compositions. Sometimes we have exactly the same composition, but two different spectra, because we have two different textures of the surface. You can see here, these are reflectance spectra of the same meteorite, it's Mukuntura. The first being the intact rock, so the intact chip of the meteorite, and the other one after it has been crushed into a powder. It's the same sample, only the texture changes, and it changes the reflectance spectroscopy. And finally, we can have exactly the same sample, exactly the same texture, but still we end up with two reflectance spectra that are drastically different. You can see this one, it's again the powder of Mukuntura. We have this spectra here that is very flat, a low amount of reflectance, and the other one that has a strong slope. And this is what I'm going to present today. It's how the geometry of illumination and observation acts on the reflectance spectra of these surfaces. So first, I'm going to start with to present how the geometry impacts the reflectance spectroscopy with measured in the laboratory, and then I will present an application to unresolved observation. Everything that I will present today is based on measurement from this instrument here. It's called SHADOWS. This is the one that I developed during my PhD. It's in Grenoble. It's a goniometer that is used to make reflectance spectra of any surfaces. You can see here on this picture of the instrument, our sample is put right here between the two arms. we have one arm that sends the light on the samples, and another arm that holds two detectors that is used to catch the reflected light. You can see that both arms are installed on rotational stages, so we can change the angle at which we send the light on the samples and the angle at which we catch the reflected light. We can, everything is also put on big rotational stages on the ground, so we can turn around the samples and we can change also the azimuth angle. With this one, I used to acquire for each sample 71 different spectra, each taken at a different geometry. Just to be sure that we start on the same page, I will start with a few definitions for the reflectance. It's not the formalism that is mandatory when we make reflectance. This is the one that is commonly used. It's not mandatory. Generally, we consider the incidence angle and emergence angle with regard to the normal of the surface. So incidence here, emergence here. And we consider the phase angle as a gap between the incidence angle and the emergence angle. So this whole angle that is here. Most of the time, we only define the geometrical configuration only using this angle here. The light will scatter of the photons and will reflect the light, and we end up with we see two different surges of reflectance, what we call the backward scattering and what we call the forward scattering. So we have two blobs of reflectance, one in the direction of illumination and the other one in the forward direction. We have several specific directions. First, it's the opposition. It's when the phase angle is at 0 degrees, so the reflected light follows exactly the same direction of the illumination. We have the nadir, which is a normal to the surface, and we have the specular direction. In this case, the incidence angle and emergence angle are equals with respect to the normal to the surface. It's generally the reflectance of a mirror is a specular reflection. We can represent the reflectance of a surface using this kind of plot, this polar plot. Again, it's not mandatory. I like this representation because we can see how the light will scatter the light, how the surface will scatter the light. It's not mandatory. In this representation here, and this is the one I will use in my presentation, the red light is the direction of illumination, and each point is a reflectance measurement. The position of the point represents the position of the observation angle, and the length here represents the amount of reflectance. So for this measurement here, we have an incidence angle of 60 degrees, an emergence of 70 degrees, and we have a reflectance amount of around 0.18, so 18%. With this polar representation, we have a good view of the back scattering here, backward scattering, and of the forward scattering. This is why I use them the most. So you can see in this whole animation here, these are real measurements taken with shadows. So again on Mukunpura, the intact chip in blue and the powder in red. And on the left, you can see the configuration on which the spectra were acquired. And you can see that we have a very strong variation, a very strong dependence of the reflectance due to the geometry. You can see that the amount of reflectance changes. We have variation of the spectral slope. Mostly here, you can see the spectra that reddens a lot. We also have a variation in the absorption band. And this is what I'm going to present today. So first, let's look at the variation on the effect on the photometry. So first, we have we can see here that the two different texture reacts differently with the incident light. You can see here in the case of the powder, we have a strong backward scattering here, and at incidence 60, we have we start to see the specular reflectance, and these effects are less marked in the case of the powder. If we want to see the strong effect of geometry, we can look at the effect of the powder here between this geometry, so incidence 60 and emergence 50, and this geometry here, so at emergence 20 degrees, we multiply the amount of reflectance by 3. So we have a strong effect of the geometry on the amount of reflectance. Also, we can use these measurements here, this BRDF, to discriminate between a surface that is intact chip, an intact rock, and a small powder. If we look at the effect on the spectral slope, there is one effect that is seen on every surface, and it first has been detected and studied on the moon in the 60s or 70s, something like that. That is called the phase rate radioning. That means the increase of slope with increasing phase angle. Why radioning? Because we said that the spectrum is red when the reflectance is higher in the long wavelengths. So we have a positive slope, and in the opposite, we say that the spectrum is blue when the reflectance is higher in the short wavelength, so with a negative slope. In this case, we have an increase of the reflectance in the wide wavelengths, so radioning of the spectrum. This effect is known on every surfaces, but each of the surfaces will have a different behavior and with increasing phase angle. These are taken on Mucupora on the powder, and if we look at the effect of the chip, we also have an effect of the texture on the spectroscopy. You can see that the chip has a spectral slope that is lower than the powder. So again, we can discriminate the texture with regard to the spectroscopy. And they have a different behavior with the geometry. You can see here the increase of slope is straighter than the one on the chip. Another effect, interesting, these plots here are exactly the same data that is shown on the plot on the left. I only plotted the different incidence angle with various colors. So it's exactly the same, only I represented the various incidence angles. You can see on this one on the powder, we don't have any dependencies, but in the case of the chip, we also have a dependencies of the phase radioning with the incidence angle. You can see on this one here, at very small incidence angle, so around 90 or 20 degrees, we have these curves here. We have this evolution of the slope with increasing phase angle. This is 40 degrees of incidence, and here it's 50 degrees of reflectance. So we have a dependence of the phase radioning with the incidence angles. That means that we cannot fully describe a geometrical configuration with only the phase angle. We need to take into account the incidence angle as well, because it will change how the surface will react. Finally, let's talk about the absorption bands. There is an effect that is common to all bands on all surfaces. It's the decrease of the amplitude with increasing phase angle. This is an effect that is due to the amount of photon that is scattered out of the surface with increasing phase angle before entering the surface and so interacting with the grains. So we have a decrease of the amplitude of the bands. But we can see that each samples will react differently. You can see on this meteorite here, we have a small increase of amplitude, and then the amplitude drops around, let's say, 50 degrees of phase angle. In the case of the Ceres element, the band increases until 90 degrees of phase angle, and then it increases. These two here are from the same meteorite. It's not classified yet, but yeah. We have two different textures, the powder and the intact chip, and you see the behaviors are completely different with the geometry. This one only drops, and this one increases until 80 degrees of phase angle, and then it drops. To explain why we have such different behaviors, we have to separate the different components of the band. In here, I focus on the 3 micrometer hydration features, but this is not a single band. This band is a convolution of several components. This band is due to OH groups that are in the sample. So it can be OH groups that are linked to hydrated minerals. So this is what I call methyl OH, and it's a green component over there. It can be OH group linked on molecular water that is adsorbed to the surface. This is the purple one. And OH group in water molecules that are trapped inside the sample. So this is the blue curves here. The big red band that we observe here is the correlation of these three parameters. If we want to fully understand why this band acts like this with the geometry, we have to separate the different components of the band. And this is what we have here. Each of these components of the band has their own behavior with respect to the geometry with increasing phase angle. They all act the same, so their amplitude increases and then decreases with increasing phase angle, but each one at their own pace. You can see this component here, so this is the water inside the samples, so the blue curve here start decreasing with a phase angle of 40 degrees, this one with a phase angle of 100 degrees, and the correlation of all these components will create the behavior of the big generator. Right now, I cannot explain why each of these components acts that way. It requires a lot of measurements on instruments that have a very high spectral resolution and that are able to change the geometry. These instruments are rather difficult to find, so right now I cannot explain why. This is an analysis that I would like to make, but right now I cannot explain exactly what's going on. And now I suggest a small application. Now that I have presented to you all the effect of geometry that is done on the reflectance spectroscopy, let's look at a small asteroid. So when we make measurements in the lab, most of the time our sample is flat on the instrument. We make sure that they have a rather homogeneous composition in the area that is observed. We make sure that there isn't big grains that create shadows on its surrounding. We make sure that the texture is roughly the same also on the studied area. So we control basically everything about our samples. On an asteroid like this, the composition is not homogeneous. We have different patches of texture. It's not flat. You can see there is a lot of craters. We have some cliffs like this. So we have surface topography that will induce changes of geometry on the surface. And finally, we have a global shape. If the light, if the sunlight arrives on this direction, if we are here on the asteroid, the sunlight is at the top. So this area here is illuminated under nadir illumination. But if we are on the pole of the asteroid, we receive the light under grazing illumination. So we have a variation of geometry due to the shape also of the asteroid. So it raises two questions. How much the shape and the topography will act on its reflectance spectroscopy, mostly when we make spectroscopic observation without resolving the surface and the shape, how much it will change its spectroscopy. And finally, we compare observation, unresolved observation of asteroids and measurement in a lab where we control everything. Do we have a bias when we compare these things? And this is what I'm going to present to you here today. To fully make this comparison, we have to take an object where we fully know its shape, its topography down to the centimeter scale. We have to know its composition and how the composition is scattered on the surface. We have to know fully the texture also. So it's impossible to find in the nature. So we have to create our own small asteroid. We have to simulate a small asteroid. How do we do that? We take a reference surface in a lab. So it can be a geological standard. It can be a meteorite, a powder, an intact, basically anything we want. We measured its reflectance spectroscopy under several geometries. So typically, this is the kind of data that I just showed you in the first part. So we end up with 71 different spectra, each taken at different geometries. It's good, but we want to be able to recreate the reflectance under any geometrical configuration. So for this, we have to inverse this data to retrieve a surface parameter, and then we will use this surface parameter to recreate the reflectance under any given geometry. We tried with the APKI model and the MRTLS model. This one here, it's a quadratic sum of various terms that we call kernel, that will describe how the light is reflected by your surface. It recreates the general amount of reflectance. It recreates the backward scattering, the forward scattering, the specular direction, the opposition effect also. It's based on real physical parameters, so it's on these terms here. And we have here some terms here that are spectral weights. So it's just factors, spectral factors that are determined by the surface reflectance properties. And inverting a full BRDF with this model here is only to find the right configuration between these weights here. So it's much faster to inverse BRDF using this model here. It's easier rather than using the APKI model. Also, when we compare results from the APKI model and this MRTLS model, we found that APKI model adds a lot of noise on the spectrum because we have a noise on the physical parameter of the surface, which is impacted on which impacts the resulting spectroscopy afterwards. So we choose to use this model here to inverse our spectra because we don't want to add any noise on our results. So we end up with the spectral behavior of the surface. In the same time, we use a shape model of an asteroid and a terrain model of an asteroid. So we have the shape and the topography of our target. And we will apply the spectral behavior on the shape model. So we will end up with a simulation of our target homogeneously covered with the same composition and texture than the reference surface that we took in the laboratory. We put this simulated object in a ray tracing algorithm. We set the direction of illumination. We set the position of the observer. Here we take a pinhole camera. The algorithm, we send a lot of light rays on that. The light will be scattered by the surface following the spectral behavior that we defined earlier. And the light will be catched by the observer, and we end up with images, with spectral images that are our object, our simulation. It's only on the computer. These are not real observation, it's simulation of observation. I would have liked to present simulation on Phobos in preparation of MIRS. They are shape model and terrain models that are very good because they have been several spacecraft orbiting the target. I know which meteorite to use as a reference surface, but I don't have enough right now. I don't have enough materials to make a BRDF on Tagish Lake, so we were not able to simulate Phobos in our experiment right now. We need a BRDF of Tagish Lake, and I don't have it now. So I will focus today on the simulation of Ceres and Vesta. On Ceres, we applied a Ceres simulant that had been rendered highly porous by a sublimation experiment. So we have the blue shape, the blue color of Ceres. And on Vesta, we showed the meteorite that is an overdite, so similar to the composition of Vesta. So first, let's look at Ceres. So this is images of simulation. We simulated two various scenarios. A spot counting experiment. So the object is fixed, the observer is fixed, and the sun moves to create variation of geometry. And we simulated a flyby. So the sun is fixed, the object is fixed, and the observer flies by Vesta. At each point, the observer looks toward the center of the object and takes pictures at different geometries. So we have our images, but what we want is the unresolved observation of the asteroid. So for each of this image, we took the reflectance spectra, we sum it over the whole surface, and we end up with reflectance spectra of our simulated target. The first plot is for the spot counting experiment. And here, it's the spectra from the flyby. You can start to see here that we have an effect of the geometry between this spectrum here and this spectrum here. They are very different. And we want to compare this with the laboratory. So we extracted So in this plot here, I show the variation of the spectral parameters, so the amount of reflectance, the spectral slope, and the depth of the absorption band, with increasing phase angle. So this is what we call phase curves. In blue and red are the results from the simulation, so the unresolved observation of CRS, and the open circles are the values that are obtained in the laboratory on the reference surface, because we want to see if there is a small variation. So first, you can see that between the two scenarios, spot plotting and observation, we don't have any difference between the various phase curves. Each of the scenario returns the same spectrum. But if we compare to the reference surface, you can see here that the reflectance from the simulation is generally higher than what has been measured on the lab. It's the same surface, just it has been applied on the shape panel of CRS. So we have an increase of the reflectance. If we look at the spectral slope of the simulation is lower than the laboratory surfaces. The 3 micrometer band is not good, it's right in the middle of the laboratory result, so it's fine. Where does it come from here? To explain the variation between laboratory surface and the simulation, we have to look at the distribution of the local incidence and emergence angle on the surface, because it's a convolution of each variation of geometry on the surface that will create the differences that is seen between the reference surfaces in the lab and the asteroid simulation. Now, why we have two similar observation? My theory is that because CRS is spherical. That means that the variation between the laboratory surface and the simulation is only due by the shape by the spherical shape of CRS. You can see that we can see some predators on the surface, but their impacts on the geometry is not strong enough to induce a very strong variation on the reflectance spectroscopy. The only thing that will modify the reflectance here is the shape of the small body. It was a spherical object, but now we can look at VESTA, and VESTA is not spherical. So same, we made the same observation, so the spot pointing experiment, the equatorial flyby, and to change the projected shape of the asteroid, we did also a polar flyby. So we set the sun in the north pole of VESTA, and the observer flies down from the north pole to the south pole, again at each time pointing toward the center of VESTA. So we have our 3 different scenarios. Same, we make the unresolved reflectance spectroscopy. We end up with this data set here. On top, it's the spot pointing, equatorial flyby, and the polar flyby. And same, we want to compare with the measured in the laboratory. So we compare the spectroscopic parameter with the one that derives from laboratory measurements. And we end up with this result here. First thing that we can see is that the 3 different scenarios end up with different phase curves. You can see here we have phase curve from the spot pointing in blue, from the equatorial flyby in red, that is what drastically different, and the polar flyby here. We have 3 different scenarios. It's the same object, it's the same surface, but we end up with 3 different phase curves only because we change the direction of illumination and the direction of observation on our object. If we compare now to the reference surface, we can see that in this area here, the simulations are brighter. That's what is measured in the laboratory, and then in this phase range here, the simulations are darker than what is measured. So we have a strong difference between laboratory measurement and unresolved observation. In the case of the spectral slope, the simulations are bluer than what is measured in the lab. And for the 3 micrometer band depth, the amplitude of the band is lower than the reference surface. Again, it's the same surface, it's the same topography. The only difference is in the lab, the surface is flat, and on the simulation, it's applied on the Earth-shape model and a terrain model. I did not plot them here, but I made also the same curve for the bands at 1 micron and 2 micron. The results are just the same. They have this dropping behavior, and they are fainter than what has been measured in the lab. Same, if we want to explain this variation, we have to look at the distribution of incidence and emergence angle on the surface, because it's a convolution of that will create the spectroscopic variation. Now, why do we observe difference between the scenarios and the difference with the lab? It's because VESTA is not spherical and we have a strong effect of the topography. You can see on the images that we see very well the craters. We can see very well the shadows that is created by the crater and by the surface topography. So the cliffs that is on this side, here like that. Compared to the side, the topography of VESTA is strong enough to induce very strong spectroscopic variation that impacts afterwards the end result spectroscopy. Most of the time in the lab, when we cannot measure reflectance under different geometrical configuration, we take only one spectrum, one spectrum, generally at a phase angle of 30 degrees, because we are far from the opposition surge, and the spectral has the reflectance of 1, so it's easier to compare. So in this slide here, I compared the reflectance, spectral slope, and band depth of the 3 micrometer band measured in the laboratory under a single geometry, so nadir illumination and 30 degrees of observation, and simulation at a phase angle of 30 degrees, like we do most of the time when we compare observation and measurement. You can see that for Ceres, we have an increase of reflectance around 3%, so we go from 11% to 40%. We have slope, we go from minus 0.021 to minus 0.5. If we look at VESTA, we have an increase of reflectance. We go from 38% to 42%. A decrease of the slope between 0.044 to 0.036. I agree that these values are not very strong. But what we want to see is how a shape affects the spectroscopy compared to the laboratory measurements. So these are exactly the same values relative to the measures in the lab. And here we have an increase of reflectance of 23%. We have a decrease of the slope of 23%, and these values here are not negligible. In the case of VESTA, we have an increase of 8% of reflectance, again not negligible. And for the slope, we have a decrease of 20%. So we have a strong effect of the shape and the topography of an asteroid that differs a lot from what we can measure in the lab. The next step for this project would be to create, to increase our collection of targets. So we need several shape models, terrain models, and various reference surfaces. We would like to try applying different patches of composition and texture on the asteroids to recreate, to better recreate the targets. And in a far future, we would like to be able to retrieve the BRDF of the surface from data from a flyby, either information about the BRDF of the surface or at least the shape, the global shape of the asteroid. Right now, it doesn't work at all because the model is not constrained, but we would like to be able to do it in the future. So in conclusion, I show you today the strong effect of geometry and the reflectance spectroscopy. I showed you that we have a strong possibility of misinterpretation of our spectra if we don't correct and if we don't take into account the geometry of our system. We cannot also fully describe the geometrical configuration using only the phase angle. We have to take into account the incidence angle because we have dependence on it as well. And finally, I showed you that the shape and the topography of an asteroid strongly impacts its unresolved observation. And we have to be very careful when we compare unresolved observation of asteroid with measurements in the laboratory, because we have differences only due to the fact that our targets are either spherical at the surface spectroscopy, but they are not flat. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Sandra. So I have to say that it was a really clear talk. Even I understood quite a lot of things. Can you hear me?
Yes, there were just Antonella saying that she had a question.
All right. Yeah. So the round of questions is open now. So yeah, you can go for it, Antonella. If you're in the room, I just want to say one more time that you should go next to the microphone to speak, or otherwise just unmute yourself or leave your question in the chat, and I'll ask it for you.
Alors, soit je répète, soit tu viens près du micro.
La question is, which is the optimal observation in the case of a space mission for interpretation? Which is acceptable for you? You know what is for phase angle and illumination condition?
Okay.
Why one is again critical?
Okay, so the question is, what is the correct configuration, the best geometrical configuration for comparison between observation for spacecraft also in orbits with regard to the one that impacts the less, the reflectance. It depends a lot on the surface. Because it depends a lot on the scattering geometry. I don't know exactly that. I don't think there is a geometrical configuration that magically has no effect on the geometry. For a spacecraft, you have observation of the surface. So the best is to correct the geometry effect that is due to the topography of the asteroid. I know that's. I have the slide right over there. This is Hayabusa 2, so you can recognize Ryugu. It's at phase angle around 0 degrees. I know that this is where that I took the measurements. You have an effect here. It's the opposition effect. So you have an increase of reflectance because you are at a phase angle 0 degree. If you know it's here, you can correct it. But instruments that are able to measure the reflectance